name is Chris Stanway, and I'm an employability advisor based on the Bendigo campus. And joining me today are my colleagues, Diane Michaelis, Senior Coordinator, Graduate Employability Programs, and Janet Jensen, Manager of Employability Programs. Now, just a bit of housekeeping before we actually begin the presentation. This session is being recorded, and I'm hoping I have hit the record button there. Janet, if you could just check that for me. And you are welcome to keep your cameras on, but can I ask everyone to please make sure that their microphones are on mute?
Recording in progress.
During the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will have time for questions. So, please feel free to unmute yourself then and ask away, or alternatively, you can put your questions in the chat. However, if you have specific questions about the match process itself, I've been advised that there are going to be some information sessions that will be running. So you'll be able to ask your questions about the match then. And in the meantime, you can also visit the PMCV website, where you'll find all of the essential reading materials, a list of FAQs and instructional videos. And of course, you can also talk to your lecturers. I'm also going to place a link to the attendance form in the chat. So can I please ask you to complete the attendance form to receive a copy of the workshop recording and also the PowerPoint slides. And also just a reminder that this, or that your attendance at this workshop will be automatically counted as a Career Ready Advantage professional learning activity. So I'll just pop that in, or Di, would you be able to put the attendance form in the chat for me? That would be great. Okay. So La Trobe University acknowledges that this event and our participants are located on the lands of many traditional custodians in Australia. We recognise their ongoing connection to the land and value their unique contribution to the university and wider Australian society. We pay our respects to Indigenous elders, past, present, and emerging. So the first step in submitting a successful application is making sure that you've actually got the basics covered. So do you know exactly when you have to apply to GNMP Match, when to complete your video interview, how to apply to the individual health services that you've preferenced, and also when you have to reorder your preferences if you'd like to do so. Other things to check are the application requirements for each of the health services you're applying to. So do you know if there are, specific questions that you have to answer in your letter or online? How many referees should you have, and who should they be? Do you need to include an academic transcript, and does it need to be certified? What type of information is required from your placements, and how should this information be presented? So, for example, do you need to include clinical appraisals with educator comments? And finally, are there any other documents that you need to submit? So once you've sort of covered the basics and you understand what's involved in the match process, the next step is to research each graduate program that you're going to be applying to. So keep in mind that not all health services will have the same offering. So it's really up to you to find out as much as you can about each program and health service. So it's important to research specific elements such as, the aims of the program, intake dates, the duration of the program, the structure of the program itself, the number of rotations, and so on. It's also important to do your research on each of the health services you're applying to. So go onto their website to learn about their services and their departments, their values, their specialist programs, and so on. And then, of course, make sure that you're clear about what their application process specifically involves. And a good starting point to find out information about these health services who are participating in the match process is to go to the Health Services Directory, which is located on the PMCV website. Now, in the Health Services Directory, you'll be able to find key information about each health service, including the contact details of the program coordinator or the manager, the number of roles that are on offer, the closing date for applications. There's also a link to the hospital's website. You'll find intake information here, and also the dates that information sessions are going to be held. So please make sure that you do go along to these information sessions to learn more about the specific programs. And also it's an opportunity for you to, ask any questions that you may have. And you can also gather information about individual health services by accessing our On24 video resource, which features recordings from Victorian health services. Now, this page is currently being updated, and we will send communications via the LMS once all of the videos are ready to view. So once you've done your research, it's then time to start putting together your resume. So what is a resume? Well, essentially a resume or a CV, and these terms can be used interchangeably. It's a marketing tool that helps you to promote your relevant skills, experience, and achievements to potential employers. And the main purpose of your resume is not actually to get you the job. The purpose of the resume is to get you to the next round of the recruitment process, which is the interview. Now, Australian employers generally expect resumes to be about 2 to 3 pages in length for a new graduate. So it's really important that your resume is concise. And on average, employers spend anywhere between, say, 20 seconds and 2 minutes scanning your resume before deciding whether they are going to shortlist you. So it's really important that you are selective about what you include in your resume. And just keep in mind that, it's not your whole life story. It's not your biography. It's important to think about what is going to be most relevant to the position that you're applying for. Now, in terms of how to structure your resume, list your information such as education, placements, and employment history in reverse chronological order. So that is, list your current or most recent activity first, and then work backwards to older activities. Prioritize information according to relevance. So the most important information really needs to be on the first page to grab the reader's attention. Your resume also needs to be, easy to read, well laid out, and professional in tone. So use clear headings and subheadings to organize information, and be consistent with your formatting. And lastly, try not to have, large chunks or big paragraphs of text. Instead, use bullet points to summarize key information. Now, there are a number of things that you can do to improve your chances of being shortlisted. So it's really important to ensure that your resume is targeted to the position that you're applying for, and that it clearly communicates how you meet the requirements of the job. So just remember that generic resumes that haven't been tailored to a specific role are usually rejected in the early stages of the recruitment process. It's also helpful to match the employer's language and incorporate keywords from the position description throughout your resume. And of course, make sure that you proofread this document. So, check your spelling, your grammar, your word choice, and your punctuation. And just remember that employers do take notice of things like spelling mistakes or typos or grammatical errors in job applications. So it is really important to demonstrate your attention to detail. Your resume also needs to be evidence-based. So this means that you need to include examples, so specific examples of your current and past experiences. And it's also a good idea to use skill statements to highlight your key competencies and achievements. So here are a couple of examples of skill statements with concrete evidence. So just make sure that you do avoid, presenting a list of skills like a shopping list. And this is something that we often see students doing. Because remember, employees need to see evidence of what you've done. So it's not just stating your opinion and saying that, I have excellent communication skills. It's really important that you back up what you're saying with concrete examples. So research by Brightnell found that people increase their chance of being offered an interview by 30% when they include skill statements in their resume. So when you apply for a job, make sure that you read the position description carefully to identify the skills that the employer is looking for, and then write brief statements to describe how you have developed these skills. Now, in addition to your clinical skills, make sure that you also highlight the transferable skills that you've gained through other experiences, such as part-time work, volunteering, extracurricular activities, and so on. Now, there's no one right way to organize and present the different sections on your resume. The order of the sections is flexible, but a general principle is to place the information that's most relevant to the job you're applying for on the first page, with less relevant information towards the end of the document. And hiring managers tend to spend the most amount of time on page 1. So this is where you really need to grab their attention. Now we're just going to take a brief look at some of the individual sections of your resume. So start off with your contact information. Make sure that you include an up-to-date email address and phone number so that you are easily contactable. And also make sure that your voicemail message sounds professional. Because remember, it's all about creating a positive first impression. You can include your home address, although often this isn't sort of compulsory. But again, just make sure that you go to the health services website to see what their specific requirements are for things like your resume and your cover letter. You can also include other information. So if for example, you've got a LinkedIn profile, you can include your LinkedIn URL here. Now, within your resume, you can include a short professional summary or professional profile, which is a 3 to 4 sentence summary of your skills and experiences as they relate to the role that you're applying for. And it's basically just a snapshot of your key selling points, and it gives the employer an indication of what you can bring to the role and how you can add value. Now, for students and graduates, education is usually listed on the first page, and it's often one of I guess, your major selling points. So it's important to include any academic achievements here as well. And you can include your results from your course, but only do this if your results are well above average. Otherwise, just leave them out. And you can also include other details like your secondary education if there's perhaps a specific achievement that you want to highlight. So, for example, if you were the ducks of your school, or you were a school captain or a house captain, it would be good to include this type of information here. But of course, this is optional. And if you've completed other health-related courses, then you can also add them in this section as well. Now, it's a good idea to include information about your clinical placements on the first page. So when you're including details of your clinical placements, make sure that you include things like the date, where you actually completed your placement, the duration of the placement, as well as your key duties and the skills that you developed during your placement. And also check whether some health services require placement information to be presented in a specific format. So, for example, they may ask you to present your placement experience in a table format. Now, another thing that you can do is to group together under one heading any other related or health-related experience that you've had. So whether that be paid employment or volunteer roles. So in this example, you can see that we've included both. So you might use a heading such as healthcare experience or relevant experience to really draw the employee's attention to these activities. It's also good to include details of any professional development activities, additional training, or short courses you've completed as a way to demonstrate your commitment to ongoing learning. And of course, don't forget to include your other work experience as a way of demonstrating your transferable skills. So, often I've spoken to students and they may have worked, as a lot of students have, in hospitality or retail, but they don't necessarily understand the value of those experiences, or they might be a bit dismissive of that. Of course, you don't have to write a whole lot of stuff about that experience, but do make sure you still include some details of that employment and focus on the transferable skills that you've developed. So, again, when we're talking about transferable skills, we're talking about things like communication, teamwork, problem solving, leadership, and so on, because these skills translate into, or, they're used across all industries and in a whole range of different roles. And when you are writing your resume, try to avoid using weak or passive verbs. So instead, use action verbs to specify what you have done and what you've achieved. And using these action verbs really helps to bring a more confident tone to your resume. So we do have a verbs list on Career Hub that you can download, or you can easily Google one as well. So it's really handy just to have that list sitting next to you that you can refer to when you're putting together your application documents. Now, as part of the GNMP match process, you can nominate up to 2 clinical referees to submit references. So your referee needs to be someone who's actually observed you in a clinical setting, for example, during your placement. So don't nominate anyone who can't comment on your clinical skills. So make sure that you contact your referees before you submit your application form to confirm their contact details and to confirm their availability to complete a reference check during reference checking time. So make sure you include their full name, their job title, their place of employment, their phone number, and their email address. For the Computer Match process, referees will be sent an email with a link for them to complete an online reference report that is actually saved against their account. And health services will have access to this information as part of their assessment process. Now, once you've completed your resume, you can upload it to CV360. So CV360 is a free service for all enrolled students at La Trobe, and it provides the opportunity for you to access immediate feedback on your resume. So once you've uploaded your resume, and it's best to upload it as a Word document, the program then provides feedback across 6 different categories, and they are listed on this slide. And you get a score out of 100. So if you need help to get started with your resume, you can also use the CV Builder tool. And both CV360 and the CV Builder tool are available through the Career Ready online platform. And I've included a link to that on this slide. Now, the other thing that you can do, and I'll mention this before I forget, is you can also visit our Career Ready Ambassador pop-up. So you can go and see a Career Ready Ambassador to get some feedback on your resume. So now we're going to move on to cover letters, but before we do that, are there any questions that you have about resumes?
I have one.
Sure.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I've been having trouble with my computer and my camera doesn't work either, so I apologize.
Okay. No, that's okay.
I have no issue with the camera. It has an issue just with working. I was just wondering, do you have considering it has to be 2 to 3 pages, and I am familiar with CVs because I'm pushing 50, so I am familiar with them. There's actually quite a lot of information if they want like clinical placements on there as well, and obviously I have a work history too because I work as an EN, so I kind of like some of that on board. Do you have sample ones anywhere where you've like different sample ones we could look at? Rather, I mean, it's a bit hard seeing slide by slide on this screen.
Yeah.
Sample ones we can look at somewhere online to get an idea of how to get it in. Because it'll be different, might be different for a school leaver who's gone straight into this course than for someone like me who has some other things and, like what to put in and what to cut out. Like I can't put in all my, units that I do online every year for work and stuff like that. So
no. Yeah. And look, it is, again, it's about prioritizing. And to answer your question, we do have a sample nursing resume that's available through Career Hub. And on the last slide of this presentation, I have included a link to the sample resume.
Okay, thank you.
But what you'll find is that with some health services, they may actually say that, you have a 2-page word limit for your resume, or a 2-page limit for your resume. So that's where it is really important to identify the skills and experience you have that is going to be most relevant to the job. So I guess it's really thinking about it from, the employer's perspective and thinking, well, what is the most crucial information that they need to know about my skill set? And so that's where you may have to really, go through your previous experience and pull out those elements that are going to be, I guess, you know, most relevant, but also where you have, you know, some significant achievements.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's the other thing to keep in mind. So think about, you know, the most impressive things that you've done, and again, what you've done that's most relevant to the position at hand.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So sorry, I know you have to be a little bit ruthless with the editing there when you've had a lot of work experience, but that's where it can be helpful to, you know, get someone else to have a look through your resume, just to get some, you know, suggestions for how you can structure that and how you can make it really concise.
Is that something we can contact Career Hub about as well?
So you can certainly speak to our Career Ready ambassadors. In the first instance, you know, I would recommend that you use CV360 because that does provide detailed feedback. So it does use AI to provide that detailed feedback. And then you can go along and speak to our Career Ready ambassadors.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
No worries. Do we have any other questions there before we move on to cover letters? So I'm just having a look here in the chat. So I can see that there is a question about whether you should include a professional photo. So some health services will ask you to include one. And so with your photo, just make sure that, you know, it is appropriate. So, you know, it may be, and typically it is just a headshot. And, you know, take a photo with you smiling as well and wearing something that is appropriate. So it could be in your uniform. That would certainly be appropriate for your resume. So don't have photos where it's kind of in a social context. So this is about you presenting yourself as a professional now. So yeah, certainly, again, go onto the health service website to see, and they may specify that you do need to include a photo on your resume. Okay, so Janet, I can see now generally we would say don't include a photo, but I know that with some health services, they will ask for that. But outside of this, generally we say, you know, it's probably best not to unless you're asked to do so. Okay. All right, no problem. All right, so if there were no other questions there, I'll move on to talk about cover letters. Okay, here we go. So let's start by looking at what the purpose of a cover letter actually is. So essentially a cover letter introduces you to potential employers and explains why you are a good fit for the role. So there is a common misconception that, you know, the cover letter is really just repeating the information that's contained in your resume, but the structure and the purpose of each document is actually a little different. So while your resume summarizes your relevant skills, experience, and achievements, your cover letter explains why you want the job, and it expresses your motivation and enthusiasm for the role. Now, before writing your cover letter, it's also important to reflect on why you want to work for a particular health service, what you can bring to the role, and why they should hire you. So these are the types of questions that you will need to be able to answer at various stages of the recruitment process. So whether that's in your cover letter or during your interview. So when you are thinking about these questions, it can be really helpful to put yourself in the employer's shoes, as I mentioned briefly before, and try to understand the recruitment process from their perspective. So essentially, there are three things that employers will be taking into consideration when they are assessing candidates. So firstly, they want to know whether you can do the job. So do you have the skills, the knowledge, and the experience to be able to perform well in the role? Secondly, they want to know whether you will do the job. So do you have the right attitude and work ethic? What's your motivation for applying? And are you genuinely enthusiastic about the role? And then lastly, they want to know whether you will be a good fit for their organisation. So are your work habits and personality a good match for their team? So understanding the employer's mindset will certainly help you to promote your key selling points much more effectively. So in terms of the structure, your resume, your cover letter should only be 1 page with about 4 to 5 paragraphs. So like your resume, it does need to be concise. Because the cover letter is supposed to complement your resume rather than duplicate it, it's usually better to write the cover letter after you've created your resume. And like the resume, you also need to tailor the cover letter for each position, rather than having one generic letter that you send out to all health services. And of course, this doesn't mean that you have to start from scratch each time. Usually it's just about modifying the cover letter so that you are incorporating things like, the health services values. So it's just about tweaking it so that it is tailored to that particular health service. And keep in mind that not all candidates will make the effort to write a tailored and personalized cover letter. So by making sure that you write a cover letter that addresses the specific requirements of the role and the organization, it's much more likely that you are going to attract the attention of prospective employers. So let's just look briefly at what you need to include within each paragraph. So the opening paragraph introduces you to the employer and explains the purpose of your letter. So it's really just about stating the role that you're applying for and where you saw the role advertised. And of course, it's important to address the cover letter to the right person. And I know that sounds really obvious, but we consistently have graduate employers telling us that they receive applications that are addressed to the wrong person and the wrong organisation. And, that's easy. It's quite easy to do when you have got a lot of things going on. You're pressed for time, you're feeling stressed about putting together these applications. So it's really important that you just take the time to make sure that it is addressed to the right person and to the right health service. And the other thing is that it's best to avoid, writing things like "to whom it may concern," because when you address someone in this way, it sounds very impersonal. So it's always best to, if you can, find out the specific person that you need to address your cover letter to. So, carefully check the application instructions. And if you're still not sure, you can always contact the health service directly. Paragraph 2 is really about explaining the why. So why you want this role and why you want to work for this particular health service. So try to demonstrate a genuine interest in the health service and their patients by showing that you have a good understanding of what differentiates them from other similar health services. So show that you've researched the hospital by incorporating information such as their mission statement, their values, their specialties, or their program structure and training. You may also like to talk about, things like research they're currently undertaking or are renowned for, or the services and care that they provide for specific patient cohorts. Perhaps it could be that you've identified a future goal and opportunities for growth in the profession, or it may be that you have completed placements at the hospital and you found that experience to be really positive and rewarding, or it could be a combination of all of these things. So whatever the reason, make sure that you explain why you're applying for this particular role with this particular health service. And one thing that I did want to mention is that when you are writing about, your values and how they align with the values of a particular health service, don't be tempted to just sort of simply copy and paste from the organisation's website. So this is another thing that I commonly see students doing. So, instead of doing that, just, copying and pasting it, make sure that you try to give specific examples of how you have incorporated the hospital's values into your life, into your work, or into your nursing practice. So on the health services website, look for the About Us or the careers pages, because these pages usually have, a mission statement, and they communicate the core values of the hospital and give an indication of the types of candidates they're looking for. You can also check out the hospital's social media sites to get a better sense of who they are, and make sure that you tailor your cover letter's tone and language to reflect the values and the principles that are unique to each health service. In paragraphs 3 and 4, you're providing the employer with information on how you meet their requirements and what you are going to bring to the role. And it's worth mentioning here that a common mistake that applicants make is to focus on why the position would be good for them, rather than why you're going to be an asset to the organisation. So it's really important to talk about what you're going to contribute, rather than focusing on what you want to get out of the program. And it's also about reflecting on your relevant skills and providing examples of how and where you have developed these skills. So in addition to the skills that you've acquired during your placement, you can also provide examples of your transferable skills, as I mentioned before, gained through activities like part-time work, volunteering, and extracurricular activities. And these things can actually be your point of difference. So I guess, just remember that when you graduate, everyone else will have the same degree as you. Everyone's done placements. So what is it about you that stands out? And so this is where, talking about other experiences, such as, volunteering or other extracurricular activities or employment, can help you to stand out from, every other applicant. And, when you are talking about your skills and experience, again, make sure you're using strong action verbs and an active voice. So, for example, rather than saying that you work with other health professionals, it would be better to say something like, I cultivated positive relationships with colleagues and other health professionals. So cultivated is a better word choice than worked with, because it sort of shows that you had a much more active role in maintaining positive working relationships. Now, as I mentioned before, attention to detail is really important, because it's one of the ways that employers will measure your professionalism. So make sure that you do proofread your cover letter, and it's a good idea to read it out aloud or have somebody else read it back to you, so that you can sort of pick up any mistakes and, you can hear how it sounds, and then you can modify it accordingly. Make sure that you use clear and easy to follow sentences. So don't write sentences that are long-winded and convoluted, because it's frustrating for the reader. Make sure that information is specific. So ask yourself clarifying questions. such as how, why, where, when, and who. And then make sure that keywords are included. So refer back to the position description and the program information, and then scatter these words throughout your cover letter. And then you can use the cover letter builder tool. So if you feel like you need a little bit of help in putting together this document, you can use this tool, and this takes you step by step through the process of creating a really strong cover letter. And this is available through Career Ready Online. Now, here is a list of resources that you can use to help you put together a really strong application. So one thing that I would suggest, and if you haven't done so already, please go to the PMCB website and have a look at all of the resources that are available. So there's information, as I mentioned earlier, about the match process itself. There is a list of frequently asked questions, and there are instructional videos that you can watch. And also another thing I would recommend is that you print out a list of the key dates and pop that on your fridge to make sure that you, submit everything on time. We also have on Career Hub information sheets. So we have Graduate Nursing and Midwifery Resume Guidelines. We have a sample nursing resume. There is a link here to CV 360. We also have an information sheet on how to put together your nursing and midwifery cover letter. We have the cover letter builder link, and also the link to our On24 video recordings, which I mentioned earlier is, that resource is currently being updated. So what I'm going to do is stop my share, and I'm going to see if we have some questions. So let me just go into the chat here. And of course, feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question. Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask you a question. Sorry, my name is Hanan, first of all. I just wanted to ask you questions in regards to referees. Can we include our mental health referees, or does that depend upon the organization?
So I guess it depends on the program that you're applying to. So if you're applying to the mental health stream, then that would seem appropriate. But again, just go back and have a look at the instructions for the particular health service that you're applying to, because they will specify who they want you to include as referees.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we've got a question here. So do we make one interview video for all the organisations we apply for, or one for each organisation? So with the computer match process, you do one interview, you do one video interview recording for that. And then you will just, again, need to check with each health service that you preference to see what their process is. So whether you need to do another video interview for them, or whether it will be a face-to-face interview. Okay. So there's a question here. If we're doing a double degree, do all the preferences need to be for a dual grad position? I'm not sure about that. So again, I direct you to the PMCB website or ask your lecturers, and they'll be able to sort of assist you with that one. So can we please have the resource links in the chat, as they are unable to be followed on the shared screen. So I think when you receive a copy of the slides, think you should be able to click on the link that will take you to the resources. Okay. Okay, so do we register for PMCV now? So again, the date will be on the PMCV website. So you'll see when you can register and when you can apply. Okay, so I'm unsure exactly how the PMCV matching service works. Are we able to create a tailored application for each of the organisations we're applying for within our preferences? Okay, so I guess it's a two-part process. So you will register for the computer match, for the GNMP match process. So that's the first thing that you will need to do. And so there are specific requirements for that. So you will need to submit your preferences. You'll need to complete a video interview. Then the second part of the process is submitting your resume and cover letter to the individual health services. So that's a separate process. So does that sort of answer your question there? So again, if you go onto the PMCV website, it will sort of go through each stage of the application or the recruitment process. But just remember that the computer match is one part of the process, and then you also need to apply to the individual health services, and that's who you send your resume and cover letter to. And you may also need to do a separate interview with them. So whether that's an online interview or whether that's face-to-face. Okay. So there's a question here about referees. Should they be from two different placements or whether they can be from the same placement? So look, I'm not 100% sure with that one. Again, you will just have to check. So if you're not sure, have a look at firstly, the PMCV website, but then also check with the individual health services to see what their preferences are. Okay, thanks for that, Zoe. Okay, and another question. I was wondering when the interview questions will be available. So now they won't, no, this is for the computer match interview questions, I'm guessing. So there will be, my understanding is that there will be different questions based on the stream that you are applying for. And I understand also that you are not allowed to discuss the questions that you are required to answer with other candidates because you need to follow the code of conduct. So I'm not sure of the date off the top of my head of when the questions will be available. But basically what will happen is that you will have a window of time where you need to complete your online interview. And you can have a little bit of a practice with your interview responses. And then you will need to complete that process online. So again, please go to the PMCV website where the process is, more clearly explained. Okay. So how, oh, sorry, let me go up here. Would you recommend any color in your resume, professional colors, to be specific, like navy? Look, I suppose I would recommend keeping colors to a minimum. So maybe if you wanted to, and look, the general recommendation is to just, use black font on white paper, because I guess you want it to be appropriate to your profession. So for example, if you were applying for a graphic design job, then you might add more colors and graphic elements. But for, I guess, these types of applications, I would just sort of recommend keeping it quite simple. But yeah, look, you may use like one color to highlight the heading, for example. Okay. So, okay. So Kylie, you're on placement this Thursday when we've got the other workshop planned. Look, that's fine. If you can't attend the workshop, just register for that session. We understand that sometimes, you know, students may not be available to attend. Just make sure that you register and we'll be able to still send you a copy of the recording and the slides. Okay. All right. So, okay, and so we've got some responses there about ordering academic transcripts. So thank you for that. Okay, so have we got any final questions before we finish up?
Hello, it's Zelko here. I apologize. This is weird. Every time you answer the question about the referees, whether or not they need to be from the same sort of area, my internet cut out, so I missed both responses.
Yeah, but you didn't miss anything. So what I said in response to that question is that it's best to check with the specific health service that you're applying to. And I think we did actually get a response in the chat from one of our other attendees. So I can't give you a definitive answer on that one. But my recommendation is just to go and check with that individual health service. So you can speak to, if you know the information isn't available on their website, then you can contact the graduate program coordinator just to double check.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So hopefully that didn't cut out then. Okay. So look, I'm not sure what the duration of the, you know, how long the questions go for, but the number of questions will vary depending on your stream that you're applying to. But you can find that information, and there is like a video that you can watch with some sample questions. So I think it's worth having a look at that, just to see the types of questions that you may be asked. Okay. Okay, so there's a question there about, okay, so I'm a little confused as to how we can include our academic transcripts as we apply for the graduate year positions when we still have our final semester to go. So in your cover letter, you can explain that, and certainly the health services will understand that. Because of where you are in your studies, that you know you may not have access to that document, you know, when you're applying. But certainly do mention that in your cover letter. Okay, so there's a question here about the video interview. Do we need to go through an interview with each organisation that you're applying for? Yeah, so as I mentioned before, you will need to do an online recorded interview for the computer match process. So everyone will need to do that. But then with the hospitals that you have preference, typically you will need to go and attend an interview. So whether that is another video interview, whether it's an interview with a panel, or whether it's a group interview, that will be specific to each individual health service. But yeah, typically you can count on going for another interview with a particular health service. Okay. So with your academic transcript, you wouldn't include that as part of your resume. That would normally be submitted as a separate document. So no, you don't put that on your resume. Okay, so the instructional video is available through the PMCV website. So, and along with a whole lot of other resources. So if you haven't had a look at the website yet, make sure you jump on there. So go on there tonight. And I think that will sort of alleviate a lot of people's concerns. Go through all of the information so that you do understand what you need to do, that you are clear about the timeline, and that you can sort of, have a look at the that sample of the interview recording to get an idea of the types of questions that you may be asked. You don't get a chance to re-record the video interview, unfortunately. So that's where it's really important to do your research beforehand. And we'll talk about interview preparation on Thursday. So it's really important that you do your research so that you, have thought of potential questions that you may be asked, and that you've thought of examples that you can give, because unfortunately you don't get the opportunity to re-record your video responses.
Sorry if this has already been answered.
Yeah, sure.
Just having a look at the PMVC website, and it says that View Match and Apply is open on Monday, the 5th of June. Just wondering whether we have more than, a week or so. I'm anticipating a few weeks to have this in. Do you know how long the match process is actually open for?
So now let me just have a look here, because I don't want to tell you the wrong information.
That's okay.
So on
Just
the key
mentally
dates
preparing for everything.
Yeah. So if you go to the PMCV website, can you see the key dates? So I'm just having a look.
It just says, unless I'm wrong.
There should be a list of key dates, and it'll tell you the closing date.
View key dates, and then it takes me to the top again. Anyway,
hang on.
I might be having a glitch in my system.
Yeah, no, let me just see if I can quickly jump on there. So PMCV.
Otherwise, it may answer some of those questions in the video, the match overview video, which I'll have a look at.
I can share my screen with you. I'm just looking at the key date. So let me just move this over to here so that you will be able to see this. So this is, share my screen. Let me know if you can see this.
Yes.
Yep, so the key date here. So the match applications open on the 5th of June, and the match applications close the 7th of July.
That's amazing. For some reason, I can't see that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So this is, the key dates here, as I mentioned, and so you can go through the timeline here. So video interview, save the date, the health services selection period, and so on. So you can print that off as a PDF. And there's information about the match process itself. So how to apply, eligibility criteria, and so on. There's a list of frequently asked questions, and there's links to other resources. So jump online so that you do have a good understanding of how this process actually works. Okay. Are there any final questions? Okay, so So Alana is saying that it closes on the 8th of July. Okay, so it doesn't have the every facility's requirements listed in their directory. Okay. So, Olivia, so you're saying that the website doesn't have all the requirements listed. So when you go to the directory.
Hello. Yeah, I've just popped on and was trying to look at the facilities that I'm looking to apply for, and I can just sort of see Barwon Health.
Yep.
There's one for Swan Hill, and I tried typing in like the Women's and Mercy, and it said that there was no data for those facilities.
Oh, okay, so perhaps it is being updated.
Okay.
The other thing is you can go directly to their website just to double check.
Beautiful.
Yeah, go directly to the website and have a look at, you know, their careers page and graduate programs just to see if there is anything that they've, you know, they've put up on the website yet. But otherwise, I guess you can assume that it just hasn't been updated on the PMCB website in the health directory section.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Zoe has mentioned too that, you know, there is a new PMCB website, so that's just the one that I've shown you. So, you know, there is still information being added there. Okay, so Catherine, you can't see the key date. So if you go on to, hang on, I'll put the link in the chat for the key date. Okay, so let me just, this is to everyone. Hopefully that works. Okay, and the new PMCB website link, I will do that as well. Okay, so this is the link. And I've also included the link on the slides that you will receive. Okay, now, are there any final questions before we finish up our session? Okay. Now, look, we might wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you found that session helpful. If you had any questions that we weren't able to get to this evening, please go on to, please, and I know I'm repeating myself, but please go on to the PMCB website. There's a lot of information that's contained on there. And I'm sure you'll feel a lot better about the process once you've gone through all of that information. And of course, please talk to your lecturers if you have any, you know, major concerns. And also reach out, go to the information sessions that each of the health services will be delivering. And also reach out to the graduate program coordinators. They're happy for you to do that. And that's why they have their contact details listed on the website. So hopefully most of you will be able to make it to Thursday's session where we will be talking about interview preparation. And if you haven't done so already, please complete the attendance form so that you do get a copy of the recording and the slides, and also that your attendance is recorded as part of the Career Ready Advantage Award. So thanks, everybody.